My name is Elizabeth Kamundia, and I'm the director of the Disability Rights Division at Human Rights Watch.
So you're in charge of the people with disabilities and looking at their rights. Yeah, where do we stand in terms of securing rights of people with disabilities?
Well, in Kenya, we have a law on people with disabilities, but it's quite outdated. It came before the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, which really protects in a comprehensive way rights of people with disabilities. So in fact, this law that we have, the Act of 2003, there have been many attempts to update it, but they've always lapsed. The bills have always lapsed in quite a number of successive parliaments.
And why do you think this is so? Is it a lack of interest from the government, or is it just like the implementation process is way too slow?
I think sadly disability is not prioritized. I think there is often a lack of political will when it comes to dealing with issues of people with disabilities, and I think those are some of the things that contribute.
When you look at this international ratification of people with disabilities rights, yeah, what are some of those laws that are articulated in this particular policy which are not yet to be implemented here in Kenya? And you feel that they are very important when it comes to matters human people with disabilities rights?
Oh, thank you. So, I mean, there's quite a number. Some of them have to do with how you're treated as a human being when you seek services as someone with a disability. In many mental health facilities, people are treated by force, they are held down, they are they are given injections by force, they are given electroconvulsive therapy without consent. There are many things where they are treated as objects rather than as human beings who are holders of rights. So the right to make decisions, we call it the right to legal capacity. We are a long way away from achieving that right for people with disabilities, but also just basic dignity. Our transport system, if you look at it, someone with a disability can be standing there, 7 matatus come and go, and if no one helps them into the matatu, they will be standing there late for school, late for work. Whereas in other countries, if there are accessible buses or if there's a rule that requires that a driver must help someone with a disability to access the service, in this case transport. So I think it's big things and it's also small things. It's the small things of everyday life where
Even as you look even at to the matatu industry, you find very few to none matatus which have like spaces where we can be able to fit a person with disability when somebody has a wheelchair. Yeah, it looks like a very big effort to them. Sometimes even they added like fare, they almost pay double.
that is true. That is true. And it really hinders their participation in life. It hinders their participation in work, in business, in education, in social life. You want to go and, be with other people, visit a friend. But if you think about what transport there is like, you end up staying at home, isolated, and that is not good for anyone's mental health. And it's also not good for all of us as a society. We are really losing the gifts and the contributions, and the government has an obligation to make sure that everyone can participate on an equal basis.
But at the same time, we must acknowledge that maybe Kenya has really done something, because I see these days building have at least they have those ramps where people walk with disabilities. Yeah, but according to your data, yeah, in East Africa, which country have you seen that has tried to implement the rights of people with disabilities the most? If you rate them at a scale of 1 to 10.
Oh, that's a good question, but I have to say we haven't looked at that specific question. So I wouldn't answer it from a perspective of data because we haven't done research comparing Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and other East African countries. But what I would say is that we as a government, we passed the law. We've had the 2003 Persons with Disabilities Act for more than 20 years now. That act, even if it's a bit outdated, it has many provisions that are good, that have not been implemented. It says children with disabilities should go to school without discrimination. Many do not. Many are still at home unable to access their local school. It says things like people with disabilities, if they have a case in court for which the stakes are high, for example, denial of property or inheritance, that they should have free legal aid. They still do not have free legal aid for cases, and many of them, because of discrimination, are denied inheritance. Their land is taken away from them. So I think the point I would like to make is when a government makes a commitment in a law, surely it must follow that commitment with financing, budget, just making sure that it actually can be implemented.
So we saw the rise of Gen Z. We cannot live without speaking about it because it's really created quite a number of people who have disabilities. Have you been able to check how many people now are included into the disability data when the Gen Z movement or the revolution happened?
Yeah, I have to say, sadly, that the response by the police and the security forces here was really out of control. And so it was brutal, and so many people shot, so many people injured, so many people assaulted in the course of those protests. While we may not have exact numbers, because even state agencies like the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights and IPOA, like even the state agencies, have not necessarily released the most up-to-date figures, because I think a lot of the investigations are still ongoing. What we found from our report on protests, which we published last year, is that if you take Jaramogi Oginga Hospital, for example, 122 people were admitted to hospital as a result of assault by the police. 47 of them had bullet wounds. So, we have a sense that hundreds were injured just from data in hospitals around Nairobi and in other counties where the protests were ongoing, but it's difficult to pinpoint an exact number of people injured or who acquired disabilities. But even just from the reporting, over 31 killed, you can imagine the mental health impact for the families of those 31. Those 122, they are huge impacts indeed.
Thank you so much, madam, for talking to us.
Thank you for your interest.
Thank you.